Okay, we are ready to go with our next session of today, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So our moderator today is Lawry, Vice President, Strategy and Insights at Miles. Our panelists today are Todd O'Leary, Vice President, Marketing and Communications, Sonoma County Tourism, Christine Spencer, Senior Director of Marketing, Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, and Kate Yordi, Associate Director, Research and Analytics at Visit Mesa.
All right. So we're going to get into this, everyone. Kind of a hard pivot from storytelling and ideas right into data this morning. But we're going to maybe pick up a little bit from what Bob talked about. And there was one line in particular that I liked from his presentation, and I don't think he meant it in this exact way, but let's throw the cookies off the table and start the picnic again. So I feel like that's a lot of what's going on in marketing right now. Maybe not exactly cookies, but data cookies in one sense or another. But I'm here joined by Todd, Chris, and Kate. And I think as we get into this, we want to talk a little bit about each of their organizations, each of their stories, and how they sort of came up in this industry, what they're doing now, or to use what Bob mentioned, their hero's journey. So I'll start with Todd and kind of work our way across, and tell me a little bit about each of your journeys in your organization with data and sort of how you've gotten to where you are, both from a position perspective, but also from how you see and use data in your everyday. And then I'll circle it back around and talk a little bit about my own.
And good morning, everybody. Nice to be with all of you this morning. So in our organization at Sonoma County Tourism, we have really we've sort of put our stake in the ground as being a data-centric organization. We talked about that on our pre-call with this particular group, and how data really sits central to not only our marketing functions, but that of the rest of the organization, and have made a lot of investments, which I'm happy to talk about and as subsequent questions, if you'd like, about that. But in terms of our marketing decisions, we really align ourselves with that data person on our team. Happens to be here in the audience, Conrad. Hope you all get to meet him, but provides my team and I with data and insights from the research, some from our research partners, and of course, different insights that we also get from our agency partners as well. So that's really helps power our day-to-day.
Awesome. Chris, how about you?
Good morning, everyone. So at the Philadelphia Convention and Visitors Bureau, so Philadelphia is unique in the fact that we actually have two DMOs. So we have Visit Philadelphia, which handles leisure domestic, and the PHLCVB, which handles meetings and conventions and overseas leisure. So we always joke, if there's an ocean between us, we handle it, and everyone else handles the actual continent here. From a data perspective, my background is actually, I started out in attractions. So I spent a lot of time working for Philadelphia museums, and I was very focused on that transactional data. Who is the audience coming in? When are they coming in? Excuse me. And how do we speak to them? How do we turn them into those ambassadors to get that repeat visit? At the PHLCVB, we focus a lot on meetings and conventions. So it's still a bit transactional, but we still have to really think about how we're speaking to them, what we're saying to them. And then as well, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, we're a partnership-based organization. So we actually have about 580 partners, and they support us financially, but they are also those ambassadors. Those are the folks that our planners are meeting, convention attendees are experiencing the city with them. So the data is really about who they are, but also how we talk to them, how we engage with them, and how we convince people to choose Philadelphia, and then repeat visitation, repeat conventions, come back, build that loyalty.
Yeah, so at Visit Mesa, we've really started our focus on communicating data with our partners, and it's been great to have these resources, these data visualizations shared with them so that they understand exactly what we're doing for them. And so my background, so I used to work at MMGY as a data analyst, and it was like a boot camp in data visualization and understanding all of the different metrics. Then when I went to Visit Mesa, it was extreme. Those just insights are extremely valuable, but also it was great to see more of the why and why these metrics are extremely important. But also, in addition to, measuring performance, there's a lot more that goes into being a DMO. So we have, all that like innovation, and like what Jack at DI says, the community shared value. There's a lot more that goes into it. So I really try to promote using data as a tool to fuel innovation, and not necessarily have that be the end goal. We want to, sort of like for storytelling, what Bob was saying earlier, we can identify those different audiences, and then tell the story to them. So we don't really want to limit ourselves, but instead just use great new technology, these great new tools to our advantage.
Thanks. And so finally, a little bit about myself on my data journey, if you will. So I'm with Miles Partnership, and I oversee all of the analytics and marketing technology for Miles. And so I look at both our clients' data, our internal data, as it pertains to marketing campaigns, website development, destination development, and sort of a whole host. And that's really the interesting thing about data is when we started speaking about this panel and what we were going to talk about, the topic of data, the good, bad, and the ugly, it could have gone a lot of different ways, right? It could have been about how we made this one individual decision, or this ability to talk about first-party cookies or third-party cookies and attribution. There's a lot of different subsets of data. And so I want to know from each of you sort of what data sources are you using within your organization? How do you access that data? How frequent it is? And ultimately, how do you make sure that it's accurate and that people are using it? Sort of just give me an overview of what's important to you, what's not, and then, sort of how happy are you with the tools that you have available to make decisions right now?
We've made a significant investment not only in having an onboard staff member that helps us to sort of interpret all of the data, but it's certainly in aligning ourselves again with different research partners and different tools that are available to us. So at a very macro and micro level. So macro level, we're working on a destination master plan right now that will very much guide the future of our destination for the next 20 to 25 years. So a lot of insights that are being gleaned from that. From a more sort of partner level, we have Tourism Economics as one of our partners, and so have work with the TE team on a very regular basis, have a monthly meeting with them that helps kind of walk through the dashboard that we have available to us through that product. And each of our different department heads sits on that call so that we each understand from our vantage points in the organization what the data is telling us to help inform our business making decisions. That data is also available to our partners. So kind of being a transparent organization in this way, our partners, our board members, different community stakeholders can access that data in real time. So that's just one example of a data partnership that we leverage rather extensively.
Awesome. Follow-up question. If you had to get rid of all of your data sources but one, which one would it be?
Well, I mean, as a marketer, I of course would. I need my marketing analytics to help power my decision. So I would sort of lean towards that. But that's a tough question to be sure.
We do not have a researcher on staff. So when I started, we had one, and unfortunately during COVID, we did reduce staffing, and that was one of those positions. We do work with Tourism Economics as well, and they are a great partner, and we make that data available to our partnership base as well. We have a customer management system called IDSS, which tracks all of our customers and also our partners. They can log in. That speaks to our website. Certainly, we use all of the Google Analytics tools. We do all of the marketing we use a company called Tempest that handles all of our kind of media programmatic digital. So they report every month on those data points as well. And then recently we actually, and I don't think of this as a data set, but it really is in the end, we've just partnered with Bandwango to actually create a pass program. And what's really exciting about that is the deals are great and we love that, but it's the back end data that we're going to be able to look into and see how our attendees, our visitors are actually engaging with our partners and be able to report that out. back to them to really reinvest and show that value to them and get them to see why they're partnering with us in the first place. That's a really hard question to talk about what you get rid of. I'd actually turn that. I don't think it's about getting rid of any of them particularly. The problems that I see is they don't speak to each other. And ideally, to have a system that allowed them all to connect so you can look at that data holistically is the missing link. We have so many different data points, and we have to sit there and look at dashboards and kind of figure it out ourselves. And that can be frustrating, and it can lead to mistakes.
Yeah, so we also use tourism economics. And so that's been really great for us to, put all of our data sources into one area, and it saves me time from having to clean all that data. As we know, it takes a long time to make sure all of your data sets are clean, deduplicated, and all of that. So it really gives me the opportunity to spend more time on analysis and identifying, gaps or patterns for the rest of our team. And we put everything in there. So we have our web, CRM, we have Bandwango, RootRes, all of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bureau of Transportation Statistics, which is all free and great. And there's so much information. So definitely look into that. And all of that economic data has been extremely helpful, especially during the COVID times when we were getting a lot of those questions, from our stakeholders, what's happening in the industry. It was very easy for us to just pull that, send off to them. And I would say, to your question, hands down, the one source I would keep is web. There's so many different things that you can identify through there. You can make sure you're tagging, the Bandwango pass, so I would still get the Bandwango or the RootRes. And so it's just a wealth of information and behavior. So that would be my number one if I had to.
And Kate, are you guys using Bandwango now, or
yeah.
you are? And
we have a couple passes up right now.
And are you seeing a significant volume in being able to use that sort of data?
Yes, yeah. We're so we put it into our CRM. So if they've opted into marketing, so we've already sent out a few e-blasts to people who have signed up. We've created lookalike audiences for Facebook ads, and those have performed really well. So with the whole loss of the cookie, it's been a really great way to sort of still get that information, that first party data, without, having to rely on those pixels and everything.
Because I know Todd has a similar project with Visit Widget, trying to, basically look at how people are doing things within the community and sort of build out profiles. And one of the problems we always see with those types of things is the sheer scale, right? And how do you take that and you can see the insights from it, but then if you want to activate on those audiences, say with a media campaign or Facebook, which, obviously media source, but how many users are you able to import in, and what's the match rate against it? And then, how do you do all of that with lookalikes, and sort of how does it sync up? That's always one of the hardest parts with this, right? Is does the capture rate ultimately give you enough data to build the model off of? And then is the model deterministic, probabilistic? Is it, skewed in the favor of one platform or another? So,
and it all depends on who you're marketing to even capture that additional data. If you're doing it all in social, obviously that demographic's going to be a little different than, if you were to do it in person at some sort of event or whatever. So no, it's interesting. Yeah, it's definitely a new project that we're looking at, but it has been great just to even get that started.
All right. So throwing out a question, because we talked a little bit about, Symphony tourism economics and using their Tableau dashboard, right? And so as it's more of a traditional data analyst, right? When I think dashboard, I think maybe 3 or 4 things on a page. And these are my organizational objectives, and these are the KPIs with the targets I need to hit. But in the last 5, even 10 years of working with dashboards is, kind of the software of dashboards, is kind of how much data can we get in, how many tables, and can we look at it? And so I want to know, when you talk about your dashboards in particularly, how much do you focus on these are my critical metrics, like my 3 to 5 things that tell me how I'm performing against the business goals that my boss and my board of directors care about, versus how much do you focus on, let's get it all in there so that I can use it as more of an exploration tool? So do you see it as a blend? Do you see it as one versus the other? Sort of, how do you prioritize that?
I mean, definitely the end has to inform the beginning and how you could sort of construct it, right? So definitely that comes from the board. board from our our president and CEO, and that changes right, year to year, board to board. Boards come and go, and so too do their priorities and the things that they're focused on. So I think it's not a set it and forget it type of situation. You really have to evolve and constantly have those conversations with the board and other stakeholders to inform the sort of data capture that you want. It's easy, very easy in this. I mean, it's the age of data, right? And we all love this, and that's perhaps why we're up on stage today, but it's very easily to get washed over by it too. And so to help sort of distill out what the key takeaways are for everybody is also critically important, not just to have the access, but the sort of interpretation almost of that data.
We talked about that a lot in the pre-call, about data for data's sake, and this point of just everybody wants every potential data point and they're not all necessary. So really being focused on what are you trying to do first. And for us, a great example is just looking at our partnership program. And for a very long time, it was just sort of, it existed and we knew we had partners, but we really didn't know anything about them. So we really tasked ourselves with those questions of who are they, when are they joining, what category are they in, and actually what is the impact to the bottom line for the company. And that's been really great. But in the past, it would have just been, here's all this data and you've got to kind of look at it and try to figure it out. And what is the data telling you? And I think it's really critical to say, what do I need to learn? And then how do I pull that data? Because there is so much out there and you really want to think about how you are asking those questions so that you're not getting overwhelmed.
Yeah, I despise those canned, just those template reports, because it makes that assumption that that's what you're looking for. But like you were saying, we want to know what our goals are, what our problems are, and work from there instead of trying to align it into, we're up year over year, great, but what does that mean for us? And yeah, exactly like you're saying, instead of looking at it like, how are we doing? We want to look more like, instead of what is the data saying, like how we're performing, like let's see what we're learning from the data. And I think that's a much better approach to using it. Otherwise, you're just going to keep trying to improve those metrics that maybe isn't what you're aligned with your goals and everything. But as far as, using the dashboard, it's been amazing because I can just shoot those off and send it to our executive team. I barely look at those ones. I look at, the ones that are 3 folders in, and that tourism economics is set up with me. And we've gone over, trying to integrate these different data sources like geolocational along with our sales data, or just trying to look at it more in depth so we can sort of get those insights and strategy. But using the executive summary has been just great because, it's what they're looking for. They want it. And I do provide, insights and highlights for them, try to explain it because I think that's going to be the biggest improvement to getting everyone sort of surrounded this data culture.
Yeah, I would just add that I think the insights are the most important thing too, because it's really easy to pull the data. And working in museums for a really long time, you get the year over year, we're up, we're down, we're up, we're down. And if you don't have an insight for someone to actually say, well, we're down because there was a snowstorm. We're down because there's a teacher strike. You need to balance that data with actually looking at it and understanding your environment that you're working into so that you can relay that information. So the dashboards are great, but you have to have that layer of human interaction to say, well, I can also tell you why. And then I used to actually track that myself outside of my data dashboards.
And there's the whole change in how things are being tracked. So maybe, we're down, impressions might be down, but that's because the entire digital landscape has changed. So we need to just sort of keep up with that and sort of set those expectations when we are providing those insights. And it's extremely valuable. Otherwise, we're down. Why? Or we're up. Great. But why?
It's a good one from a context perspective. One of the things that has been really interesting this year is last year, while depending on destinations, COVID had an impact, didn't have an impact either positive or negative. One thing that we saw across so many of the different websites we managed was probably the highest rate of traffic to websites ever, because as a destination, it's kind of viewed as the official source for that travel information. The COVID policies on the websites got huge amounts of sessions to them, right? And so they didn't always result in someone traveling, but you could have built a model in the past based on that, right? And so, how are you saying like, okay, we had all of this extra traffic last year, and now we don't have it this year because no one's looking at the travel policy this year, and we're not ranking for that page anymore, but it was 40% of our traffic last year. And, do you have a plan for that? And then at the same time, are you doing comparisons on 20 or 19? How are you handling the year over year type thing? Because I know we handle it 3 different ways, so now we have multiple different comparison points on every sort of report that we do, because there isn't a sort of accepted way of handling that right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're dealing with that. Certainly, I mean, like you talked about, the COVID page and other associated pages got, to your point, Gray, a ton of traffic. It still does, actually, with this sort of spike that we're seeing recently. The other thing that we're dealing with, and I think a lot of you as my fellow DMO marketers in the audience can relate to, we're on a July fiscal, and ours is a type of destination that has fared relatively well compared to maybe some other destinations. So we have all this money that we need to spend by June 30th at the end of our fiscal year. So I've been plowing money into paid media, and so of course our May and June web numbers and other things are going through the roof. But come July 1, I'm like, I don't have that much money to spend. So you've got to have those data markers and those kinds of like however you keep that so that it's sort of justifiable when I have to go back to my boss and be like, remember last year we had all that money to spend? So you definitely need to kind of keep that data however you can, just to make sure that you keep the status quo.
Yeah, we're exactly there too. It's like the July 1 start. You're like, what can I do in June? Which is why now suddenly I've got like 3 photo shoots, paid media, and like all the stuff that has to be squeezed into 3 weeks, which is going to be a lot of fun. But it's also about keeping your vendors a little honest. I mean, we were getting reports on website traffic, and they're like, you're up year over year. And I'm like, okay, can we look at 2019? Like, can we really look at like 3-4 years? Because I can say I'm up, and that looks great, but it's not honest. Like, and where are we up? Are we down on the COVID page and we're up over here? Weirdly, free and budget friendly is really through the roof on the website, which is funny because we're convention and meeting planners, but it works out. But yeah, you got to kind of look at those data points and really look at, to your point, your spending and be able to explain it. And then we are looking at 2019. We're like really going back to see where were we before. And, it's not the new normal. We all agree like it's going to change, but we want to look at kind of how we've grown. And digitally, actually, throughout COVID, like we saw such high engagement too, just because people wanted to experience things virtually. It wasn't even the COVID pages. They just traveled virtually. And our museums and our attractions offered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we are definitely comparing to 2019 and then also now 2021 because in Arizona, we actually had a pretty decent 2021. We came out, pretty early out of there. We were seeing a lot of growths, almost up to 2019 levels in 21, but now we are finally surpassing those. So we're looking at both. We're also looking seasonality, but really just looking at those metrics that are, cost per click or, click-through rate, some of those rates so that you're not, looking at, we had to spend a ton of money on media. So, but is that performing well? Are we seeing those same levels of engagement year over year? But yeah, it's been a very trying time, I would say, just trying to figure out what the best way to go is. And I know we're all in the same boat there.
Yeah, as a Floridian, COVID didn't exist here, so our destinations had basically banner years in 20 and 21. So now, actually, as everyone else opens up, it's kind of the shift that's happened. But you talked a little bit about media, right? And so maybe it's just where I sit in an organization or what I usually get, asked to speak about. A lot of it's around media analytics. And I wanted to understand sort of in your overall data and analytics suite, if you will, all the different sources, what percentage of it is really focused on trying to understand media effectiveness, and, outside of how big it is in the overall scheme of everything you're doing, typically what percentage of your overall media budget are you spending on the analytics side? So, either ad serving or an Arrivalist or an Adara or, one of the other sources to ultimately understand clickstream behavior on that media. What's your general ratio, or it feels like that's grown a lot over the years?
When we're in campaign mode, we sit with our agency at least once a month to review data analytics. And I always say, do we, move the lever up or down, depending on what we're seeing, and kind of gleaning from those insights. So at a very bare minimum, a monthly basis when we're in campaign mode, even we're customers of Miles. And so looking at data and analytics from what this sort of scope of work that we do with Gray and his team, also at minimum at a monthly basis, just to make sure that we're fine-tuning and really understanding, especially in this sort of brave new world, exactly kind of what we can glean from those insights. In terms of spend, it's sort of baked in, at least with those two examples, it's sort of baked into the overall spend. There's not an incremental spend to look at those analytics. That's all just sort of part and parcel to the buy.
Got it.
No, I agree with that. And we look at it every other week. We sit with our agency and do we need to dial up? Do we need to dial down? We have started doing a lot more creative A/B testing, like what is performing well, what is not performing well, what is resonating with the customers and driving clicks to the website. For us, it's all about sales leads. So we then really track everything from media to website traffic into actually working with the sales team to figure out how many leads are coming in so that we can really figure out which publications, which sites are driving that kind of sales. And we've actually, traditionally, we were very much about, we marketed directly to meeting planners in their publications and sites. And, ding dong, like they don't just read meeting planner publications. So we started doing a lot more business publication, Forbes, Washington Post, and those are actually performing really well for us, like really driving in the corporate business. But yeah, we look at it constantly, but from a percentage, we're pretty much almost 100% digital in what we do, even if it's buying on a website or buying dedicated newsletters or advertorials, like everything is really on that digital platform.
Yeah, I actually don't know how much you spend. We have a Julie, our finance person here. Maybe you can tell me the budget. No, but we are very just everything that we do is digital. Even when there's something, so we want to do some sort of activation. What can we track from that? So that's honestly been a great mindset shift in our staff. Is anytime there is like a new idea, something that they want to try out, they'll be the first one to ask, like, what does the reporting look like? How do I track that? And it's been great for me to see that. But we do work with an agency, and they do all of our media buys, and we invest in sort of those we have NEAR, we have tourism economics, we have all those different like third-party reports that sort of steer where our media team, buys and puts their placements. So it is all very integrated in what we're doing with the strategy.
All right, getting into sort of, the title of this session, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I want one example where data has sort of been a good story, obviously, a win, if you will, and then one where, data has been used in a way that maybe wasn't the best or, gave you the wrong assumption, you went down a path. So one good story and one bad story on how data has sort of played the role in something you've done.
Our good story is a very recent one, something that we all feel very proud of on the team, and that is our recovery campaign. So we worked with a myriad of partners, not the least of which is our agency, Fahlgren Mortine, to put together our recovery campaign that welcomed folks back to wine country after the pandemic. And looking at the data, sort of again from myriad different ways, from Longwoods, from Miles, from destination analysts, and sort of gleaning what were consumers looking for in a travel experience post-pandemic, and it was decidedly in this sort of wellness and well-being, very centric way that they just needed to get right here and here, and we felt that we had a lot of sort of meat on the bone in Sonoma County, so to speak, to speak to those folks. So we really led with that data and constructed this campaign around just that. And we just finished a ROI study with Longwoods that looked at exactly the return on investment on that particular campaign. It was $203 to $1 spent, which was the highest ROI in a campaign that we had ever received. So that was, we still puff our chests out about that. I'm not going to lie. It feels really great to have that kind of return. not to be not a team player, I don't have a very specific example on a sort of ugly story, I guess. But I would just say that as we kind of talked before about not letting data overwhelm us or sort of wash over us. I think as a marketer, I use data to guide me, but it is not an absolute. So I think we still need our right brain. So it's important to sort of balance our left and right brains, especially as marketers, I think just in general, because it is easy to sort of get sucked down into the quicksand of data. But definitely use that right brain too.
Definitely.
From a good story standpoint, just because partnership's really on my mind, we've just sort of absorbed that into the marketing department in the last 6 months. And it's been really great because it was a department that never looked at data. And now we are looking at it and, surprise, surprise, it's a program that generates almost $1 million and we have 580 partners. But no one knew that. Nobody really knew the value of it. And so it wasn't really engaged with in the way from a company standpoint that it needed to be. And now there's a lot of focus on it and we're really working with our partners to understand what they want, and we can track when they join and we get a sense of seasonality and all of that, which is really helping us really figure out what is the engagement program now, how do we deal with them. I am also not going to be a team player, sorry. I don't really have a specific horror story, but I would say, and I'm sure this has happened to everyone, there is sometimes an overreaction to data, especially coming from leadership, where something happens and the numbers aren't exactly where you want them to be, or things are kind of negative, or whatever it is. And there's a knee-jerk response to, well, we need to throw this out the window and start over. And that it makes me crazy. Like, we need to look at trends. We need to think about it, write it out a little. 1 month of data does not tell the story. And so that has happened quite a bit in my career, where you just get someone who's like, well, explain to me why this is happening, and now go out and get a new agency. Obviously, they don't know what they're doing. You're like, okay, let's calm down first, and let's give it 6 months. Let's give it 3 months, or we can adjust programmatically. We can adjust our ads, but let's not throw it out yet. Let's figure out what's going on first, and let's use our right brains and kind of think about it and take that human aspect too and say, okay, what is happening environmentally too?
One good data decision we had made. So back in 2019, we were seeing, we worked with a short-term rental reporting third party. And so we were seeing there was, an increase in short-term rentals. And in Arizona, we do collect back tax from them. So it was something that we felt comfortable, dipping our feet into. So we started working with, OTAs, VRBO, started running short-term rental campaigns, and those have been extremely successful for us, not only in terms of engagement, but traffic. And we're seeing we've continued it. We haven't really stopped. We are always now going to have some sort of short-term rental campaign in our entire mix. So that was really great to see. And that came from us looking at the data, seeing that there was search, there was interest from our audience, from our users. So that was a good one. I would say bad. So we did start creating reporting for our partners, and it's been great. But then sometimes it's not. And so the transparency is wonderful. And that's one of the things that we love about data, is being able to say, well, this is how it actually is. You see, there's a sense of legitimacy that you get from being able to write those numbers. But, sometimes it doesn't turn out the way you want it to. And, there's been times where our partners have, oh my God, this is great. Thank you. Or I thought you guys were doing so, and it helped our team understand where, there were gaps and that things that we needed to focus on. So it's not necessarily all bad. Obviously, that is why we're doing it. But it was one of those things where, can you make this look better? No, absolutely not.
Yes.
This is what you get.
I know that challenge of, let's give everyone their metrics in a dashboard, and, the person that gets maybe 2 views or 2 clicks a month is always the one that, is the loudest one in the room as well. So there's always that double-sided coin, if you will. We're about to wrap up here. I'll give you an example of a positive and a negative, and then we can kind of go from there. So for us recently, a couple different things that have happened data-wise. A positive positive example is we're working with a client in Georgia, and we're looking at some of their media mixing. And what we saw is that there was a lot of people from Orlando looking at, sorry, getting distracted by a TV over there. A lot of people from Orlando and on sites about Disney. And so this is not really anywhere in relation to Disney at all whatsoever. But so we're trying to understand whether or not the people that are looking at those Disney-specific sites and that are in Orlando actually live here, or are they part of another, or are they on another vacation and looking to hit that destination on I-95? So it's those little insights of kind of digging down into a campaign, seeing websites and locations that kind of spark a heuristic idea and then allow you to test on that. So that's been a positive example that we've been exploring lately. The other, I would say, negative is getting too caught up in the eCPCs and the CTRs and the rates around media and allowing the algorithmic auto-optimizations of DSPs to sort of just take over, because what they're going to do is they're going to buy the cheapest traffic possible to get to those lowest rates. And when you actually don't balance that while looking at site quality, which again is an objective term, we end up seeing quite a bit of sites you would never really want to be on in a programmatic space, but the CTR is great because everyone on the Metro PCS home screen is accidentally clicking your ad for the luxury vacation you're trying to sell, right? So that's one thing where I think it's both a positive and a negative. And so just an example, and ultimately, this was a great conversation. Thank you all for being here today. And if there's any parting words or trends you want to kind of put out there to the group, let's do it. And if not, thank you. All right. Well, I think we're wrapped up. This is always a little different. Thank you.